What's up, everybody? You're listening to episode 13 of Just Breathing with Laud Lungs. I'm joined today by Brittany Letterman, and we're going to talk about a lot of things, and we'll figure that out as we go, like usual. And I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we get to talk. We have babysitters tonight, as usual, when we talk, or the kids are in bed, so it's babysitter night. Always exciting. So we're going to get into a lot of different stuff. Obviously, this is a time when we're recording this. This is day 3.
Yeah.
Day 2, day 3, however you want to count it.
Day
after
3.
the election.
Yeah.
I guess this is day 3,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, we're still in that. That's a mess. So we'll get into that. There's so many other things going on in our country right now, and so many other things that have just been on my mind that I want to talk about. But let's start with the election, because why not? Everybody's talking about the election, so let's talk about the election.
Yeah.
Because more people need to talk about the election. Yeah. I'll start. I have been so I don't even know the right word. I was going to say bamboozled. That's not the right word. Baffled. That's the word I was looking for. I've been so baffled at the way this election has gone so far.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was going to be bad, but I didn't expect it to be this blatantly bad. And it's hard to even know how to describe it right now, because there are so many things, like usual, so many things out there. I've been sharing with you some of the Project Veritas stuff that has been coming out with people coming forward, and there was a guy, they put out the video last night of a guy that confessed that, his supervisor had told him to put ballots with a postmark that was for today in like a bin so that they could redo the postmark for the day before.
Oh.
Yeah. So technically they would have been late ballots. They arrived too late to be counted for the election. Now this doesn't in theory affect either side.
Right.
But it's not integrous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The state had a law that it put in, or not even a law, but it put a procedure in place. Every state kind of made a procedure because of COVID and everything like that to how they were going to do the elections.
Mm-hmm.
And this state had decided that if ballots were not received by the day before, then they're void. You can't count them.
And hopefully the state knew that. Everyone in the state.
But that's the shady thing. The fact that and it's so hard because there's so many people like count every vote. And I hear that on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw what do you call it? A billboard when we were driving here that was put out by the Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
But then I've seen protesters on the left saying count every vote.
Right.
So everybody wants the vote to be counted.
Right.
I'm like, why don't we just come together and say, hey, let's have a good election.
Right.
But instead, you have this weird stuff happening.
We just need I feel like it doesn't make, why can't we just have clear-cut directions like usual? Like that's what orderly people do.
COVID, though. I mean,
well, why do we need to add more
usual?
Chaos to the COVID thing? Like,
has anything been usual?
No.
In this COVID response. And don't get me wrong, I'm definitely, I don't know if you would call this being a federalist or whatever, but I do believe in state sovereignty and really allowing the state to have governance over its people, over its state, over its laws, in its jurisdiction. But that has led to some ridiculous measures being done in certain states.
Yeah.
Some states, like think for example of South Dakota, they didn't lock down at all.
Mm.
Their governor was just like, "Hey, this is real.
Right.
It's not a hoax.
Mm-hmm.
We're not denying it. Wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
Socially distance. Wash your hands.
Right.
Have at it."
Right.
Now, constitutionally, that's right.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That should be across the board the way that everyone should have acted.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we got scared at the beginning because 2 million people were supposed to die, according to a couple different studies that later changed their amounts and everything. But we didn't know.
Right.
So in the absence of knowledge, we gave our freedoms, to the state, saying, "Hey, it's your job to protect us," which it is.
Mm-hmm.
It is their job. Protect us from this virus. Do what you think is necessary to protect us from this virus. And that's how the lockdown started in most states. But still, it was under governor jurisdiction to decide how heavy, how long, how all that stuff. And it's been a mess.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a mess up until this election. And you have states like Florida that's basically fully open.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have states like California that are still closing things down, that are in second wave lockdowns.
Oh, I didn't realize that. They opened up and they're locking down again?
Yeah, California, they call it California. I mean, but it's just, it's like, it's weird because certain mayors
Except, are the people there okay with that?
No, they're really not. And that's why there's this mass exodus out of California.
So then are they going to say they don't like their governors anymore? Or are they going to still vote them back in?
I don't know. I mean, we can get into this maybe with the election talk, but there's just so many people that are very, and this is not a knock per se, but they're very ignorant on politics. Mm-hmm. They're very ignorant on people. What did I have? Oh my gosh. I'm not going to say his name because if he ever listened to this podcast, he would kill me for saying it. But one of my coworkers, I was talking to him the other day, and we were talking about voting. We didn't go into who you voted for and all that type of stuff, but we were talking about the ballot system in PA was like a touch screen that you would go down. And he was like, "Yeah, there's this I saw this guy for the Libertarians," and I was like, "Joe Jorgensen?" And he's like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Oh, dude. Oh, dude. That's a woman.
Oh,
no. That's a woman." And he was like, "Oh, no."
Oh, my.
But he is a person that he follows enough to kind of stay, up, current to what's going on in general. But the nitty gritty, Can
I add something to that? So I was thinking about this the other day because of how busy that I am. And I was thinking, it is a little scary. I'm so thankful for you that you keep up to date with these things because I don't. And I know I've said this before and I continue to say it. I do want to be up to date and I do try my best.
Right.
But my day is so full, and I know this isn't really an excuse, so I can't have an excuse, but my day feels so full that I'm like, how would I have the time? Because really you need to do it every day or at least once a week, take a few hours to figure out everything that happened and find the sources that are credible and not totally biased,
right,
to find out your information. So I'm like, I'm not the only one. There's so many people, I'm sure, who are in my same boat who are and I don't even work full time, working full time, that have kids and are just trying to get by, to know the facts. Mm-hmm. It stinks. Mm-hmm. It stinks. And every outlet on TV, you're going to get very biased
Right.
answers.
Yeah.
And like, I just want the truth. Just tell me like what happened so that I can decide.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just, cause like, I wouldn't have known that person
Yeah.
that you that guy talked about. Like, I was like, okay, so I'm going to just educate myself to the best of my ability to the people who will most likely get elected. So I know who best to choose.
Yeah. And everything's so politicized.
And I'm going to totally ignore any other candidate because they're not going to get elected and it's not worth my time because I barely have time enough to figure out these two,
Right.
you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part about a two-party system and a heavily politicized media. You know, because the mainstream media and maybe you could even call them legacy media, because what I've really noticed throughout this pandemic and kind of rising political tensions this whole year is that independent journalism has skyrocketed.
That's a good thing.
You know, and I think it's a very good thing. You know, independent people like Tim Pool or now Glenn Greenwald left his position at The Intercept.
Oh, yeah.
Which is that was a more left-leaning news publication, but they were trying to censor him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I know like Matt Taibbi is another left-leaning guy, but he left the Rolling Stone because of, he wouldn't say, but similar issues. And it's sad, but kind of awesome because now it's opening the door for these guys to really be free. You know, I think they built enough of a career that they can be financially stable enough to sort of venture out on their own. And maybe this is the push for more independent journalists to rise up and say, I don't like what's going on here. I don't need what's going on here.
Go back to real journalism.
Well, and that's the thing. Maybe this is a real positive time for journalism because the legacy media has gotten so fake. And I'm hesitant to use that word because even that word is so politicized now. Interesting fact though, I heard this the other day. I didn't know this, but Hillary Clinton was the first one to use fake news.
Oh.
It wasn't Trump. Now Trump took it and he ran with it and he made it what it is today. But
I did not know that.
I didn't know that either. I guess Hillary was referring to, I don't remember the specifics of it. She was referring to something though in the news and just called it fake news. And Trump's like, I like that. I'm going to use that all the time. But yeah, this might be a very good thing for journalism because we've seen that a highly biased media botched this election on both sides. They had no idea. I mean, this election is right now razor thin margins in so many states. And even states that have been called, it was so close.
Yeah.
And they were calling for a Biden landslide. They were calling for a Biden, to just wipe everything up, House, Senate, everything. It was just going to be a blue wave. And it really hasn't. And I'm not making a political statement in that. I'm just saying they got it so wrong.
Yeah.
The polls were so wrong. I mean, like some of the most recent polls had like Biden up 12 points, like nationally.
Wow.
And that's not even close. So there's going to be, in my opinion, in my hope, there's going to be some type of reckoning for the media. And I enjoy the independent journalists that I go to now. I've listened to so many more journalism over this pandemic than I've ever listened to, and I haven't listened to, oh man, I might listen to like a couple people. Like Tucker is a pretty reasonable guy and he is kind of a really moderate person, even though he's at Fox News. I know it's a right-leaning organization. He's fairly moderate. And I think that showed because his viewership skyrocketed through a lot of 2020. But, I'll go to him sometimes, but that's the most legacy media that I ever watch. It's always interviews with other journalists and more independent journalists, like some of the guys that I mentioned. And there's some good female journalists out there out there too that I've discovered. Anybody that can criticize their own biases is a good journalist.
Yeah.
Because humans exist on both sides.
Oh, yeah.
And if humans exist on both sides, there's going to be things to call out.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be stories to investigate. There's going to be scandals. There's going to be all kinds of stuff that it is your job to find out, no matter what their political leaning is, and tell us about it. And we've lost that with the legacy media. They will. I mean, we saw that with, big tech censorship of all this Hunter Biden stuff, which you don't even hear about anymore. I mean, I think it was made way bigger by the fact that it was censored so heavily by big tech, and the CNNs and different ones wouldn't talk about it. Like when I would
they were saying that it's not credible. That's what they were saying. So,
yeah. And that was such a weird one too, because I think people, at least I hope, I think a lot of people saw through that bias also, because the Biden administration never denied it.
Right.
If it was fake, they would have come out and denied the emails.
I mean,
that's what every politician does. If something's fake,
don't people deny things even if that's not true? Yeah. So I feel like,
yeah, a lot of people denied stuff. I mean, you would have, and this is the thing, and I'm gonna explain this statement, but everybody accuses Trump of being a liar, and this one blows my mind, because let me bring you back a little bit. Let's go back to Bill Clinton. I never had sex with that woman. No, you did. You did.
That's a great example.
Let's go to Bush. Oh, there are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. We have to go in there. And don't get me wrong, I was in support of Iraq when they went in there, and I'm fine saying I was wrong about the WMDs. I thought Saddam Hussein was a douchebag, and he needed to be taken out. Was it our job to do it? I don't know. I'm not smart enough to really get into all of that stuff, but the dude was blending people that he didn't like. He was throwing them in mass blenders.
No.
He was a disgusting human being. I'm glad that he's gone. Anyways, so those are two presidents that have lied to us. Obama lied on multiple occasions. He lied about Ferguson. He said that kid could be like my son. Wait, was that Ferguson? There's a couple different instances where he raised the racial tensions in our country to things that were justified shootings, which were determined justified shootings by his own attorney general and by eyewitnesses, and so many other instances that we were just lied to.
But you never hear.
If you want to keep your doctor, you can keep your doctor.
Oh, yeah.
Under Obamacare.
Yeah, that's not true.
Were you able to keep your doctor?
I experienced that untruth.
Exactly. They all lie.
Yeah.
They are liars.
I think that's the sad thing, though, is like we never hear that. It's never pointed out by anyone. Right. It's never pointed out by anyone unless you actually experience it, and then you're like, oh, wait, that wasn't true.
It is by fair-minded journalists.
So then you never even really know. You never really know unless it's pointed out or you experience it yourself. And so that is why they can stay. That's why we keep falling for it. Is because it's just hidden. All the deception is hidden, and you don't see it because you're not, unless you experience it, and then maybe you don't even make the connection.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, do you think it's a lack of forgiveness? Do you think that's the major issue in our country? Why truth isn't allowed to be paramount in journalism, in conversation? Because it kind of, everything goes so quickly to covering something up, or so quickly to
I don't think
trying
it's
to defend a person because they're on my side.
I think it's an unwillingness to hear the truth. It's an unwillingness to.
What do you mean, though?
Maybe I don't understand your question, right?
So I'm saying, I'm trying to kind of pull back a little bit and say, do you think that it's because we are so terrible in our country, you can see it right now on social media, we're so terrible at forgiving people. If they do something wrong, we are going to crush them. We're going to destroy their life because they are not worthy of continuing to live in our culture. You know, we're the excommunicationists of, you know, culture.
Well, I mean, that's true that we like to shut people down and destroy them if they did something wrong, but
what I'm saying is there's never forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't even an option on the table. There's never, well, let's hear them out. Let's hear where they came from. Let's hear, you know,
has that though ever happened? I feel like we've never had the chance to do that. We've heard a lie, and it's always a lie, and no one. I don't think I've ever had any. Has anyone ever come out and said I'm sorry for something that actually was a misdeed, and not just they said something that people didn't like? Like, people say they're sorry all the time for saying something that might have hurt someone's feelings, which is just kind of silly because that was their opinion. But
right. But we never forgive them. You know what I mean? They make that apology and usually...
Oh, well, they get to keep their job then.
Sometimes. I mean, there are some people that are disingenuous, and I understand that, where they'll apologize just to satisfy the mob and move on.
Right.
Keep their heads low. The mob will go somewhere else. You'll come out and you'll be fine again. But I'm just thinking back to, okay, let's go back to Bill Clinton. Now, I was too young to really follow that too deeply. But I don't know if he apologized. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't remember that
I would
either.
imagine he did after it was proven and it came out and everything. I don't know if he apologized, but if he did, would Republicans forgive him? I don't think so. I think it's so in their interest to have this narrative. Like, obviously, I know about it. Everybody knows about it. And if I was trying to be politically biased, it would be advantageous to me to point to it.
Right.
And say, remember that sin?
Right.
You know, if you want to get Christian about it, do you remember that?
Yeah.
I don't know how good we are with forgiveness.
Yeah.
And I wonder if we were better at forgiveness, would we have more truth? Would we have more people incentivized to be honest? And to come out and say, and this is something that I do hate too, and this isn't a lying thing. This is I've made a mistake with this, with a decision, like a political decision, you know, bad choice of words, whatever it is, lifestyle choice, whatever it is. Nobody comes out and owns up to their mistakes.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all those things. Like, it's a combination of, you know, people in those positions are too proud to do that in the first place.
Right.
And then, yeah, people are too harsh in wanting to just destroy them then. And then you also have, I think one of the other results of those two things is, I mean, politicians, they just tell you what you want to hear. That's just what they do. So, like, they're going to lie to you because whatever it is that you want them to say, they're going to say it, and it's going to be a lie, and they don't care. And you want to hear that until you find out that they lied, and then you'll destroy them. So it's just a big mess.
Yeah. Yeah. Yay.
And that's why people like me who are so busy, I'm like, this is exhausting. You know, and it feels almost like a waste of time.
Yeah.
Because even if it just takes so much time and research to find out what is true.
Right.
What is true. And some people that are reporting on it believe something that's false. Right. And so they're writing false narratives. And then you read that and you can't accept that as truth unless you figure it out for yourself.
Yeah. And that's why I do I love the word legacy media. I'm just going to keep calling them legacy media from now on in my normal speech, just because I really do believe that cable news is dying.
I hope so.
No one, well, they're not credible. They've lied so much, and when they redact information, they don't make it public. Like when a newspaper would have to redact something because it was incorrect, they would usually issue a statement.
It's the same thing as lying, basically.
Yeah,
they're lying and they don't tell you that it was
Nowadays,
incorrect.
they just kind of erase it, maybe put like an addendum at the bottom of the article to say that it was like this part was removed or something like that. But like they don't announce like, hey, we got this wrong.
This is important, guys.
Well, especially when
this is not true.
Yeah, and that involves people's lives many times. And that's sickening because they'll just destroy somebody and then not really ever apologize, not really ever say, wow, we got this wrong.
That's probably the worst
part. That's what happened to that Nick Sandman.
Can you remind me what that is?
Yeah, so he was the kid where this activist who was of, I believe, Native American descent came and started beating a drum in his face.
Oh, yeah, that poor kid.
And he just was standing there. The guy walked through a crowd up to him. Now, he had a MAGA hat on, Make America Great Again hat on. And the guy started beating the drum in his face. And it looked like he had this smug expression on. Mm-hmm. Really, he was just trying to smile and be polite.
He's like a high schooler.
He was a high schooler.
He doesn't know what to do.
Well, he's younger than high school. Had no idea what this guy was doing. But it was a hit job. And we found out about that later, that it was an actual hit job. He walked through the crowd and walked straight to this Nick kid because he's like, that one. I'm going to choose him and I'm going to get a viral video
of this
me
kid.
So
mad.
And there was newscasters on Twitter that were saying, I'd like to punch that kid in the face. I'd like to wipe that smile off his face. There were death threats constantly being thrown at this kid. I mean, could you imagine as a parent?
Oh, I would be furious.
I would be out for blood. And don't get me wrong. Thank God CNN, because they were the ones that really pushed this story. And they're a disgusting news organization to begin with. But they did have to pay, I think.
Because he took a lawsuit to them.
Right. He sued them, understandably, because they ruined his life. And he gained like a lot of money.
That's good. He deserves it.
But he deserved it.
He deserved it.
Without a doubt. And you'll never hear an apology. Ever. I've never heard an apology from CNN.
Yeah.
I've never heard any one of the reporters that reported on this and were like, this looks gross.
That's because they don't care. They really don't care. And they don't want anyone to know. Well, that is the truth. They don't care about him. They paid him so that it can be quiet and they can continue to do what they do.
Yeah.
And that's what makes me so mad.
Right.
Makes me so mad. Oh my goodness.
Well, I mean, that's what they did with this. And this is maybe more of a controversial one for some people listening, but like the Kyle Rittenhouse one. Here's a 17-year-old kid that shouldn't have been out in those Kenosha riots. Mm. He had like I think like an AR-15 on him or something like that, just for protection. But he was actually providing medical aid. Like they have videos of him providing medical aid to protesters and rioters.
Wow.
During the riots.
Yeah.
Like, so he was like trying to help people. He was like giving out water and all this type of stuff. Some things went down. He started getting chased by a couple rioters.
Oh my goodness.
I believe 2 of whom were convicted felons.
Oh goodness.
A gun went off while he's being chased. He was not the first to fire. They have video evidence. They have witness evidence. They have all of these things. And then he turned around and fired to defend himself.
Yeah.
He's labeled as a Nazi.
Yeah.
By the news. By CNN, they call him a white supremacist, an alt-right supremacist.
Why did they target him?
Huh?
Why did they target him?
Because they need a narrative, babe. Yeah. And if
like, did he have a Trump hat on or something?
No.
Like
he had no prior leanings towards Trump. He had no prior affiliations with anything. He was out there supporting Black Lives Matter and the I'm not even gonna say protests, the riots that happened in Kenosha.
And then helping the people that were getting hurt.
And he was trying to provide medical aid. He was 17. He should not have been there. You know, but he was trying to do the right thing. He defended a gas station. He made sure that they were going to burn down a freaking gas station. What the freak?
Wow.
Sorry, I'm getting worked up. But I'm getting worked up because we have serious issues in our country where we have news media, and I do agree. They don't care about anything but the narrative, but their bias, but the agenda.
Yep.
And that's why a 17-year-old kid who happens to fit their color spectrum of people that are evil, even though the majority of the broadcasters on that network fit that same spectrum, this kid is a white supremacist, neo-Nazi, alt-right, whatever label you want to throw on him.
It's so sad.
And it's like, I don't know. If that was my kid, I mean, I can't imagine.
No.
I can't imagine. Would I be mad at him?
Yeah.
I'd be like, what were you doing? Why were you there?
Your brain is not fully developed yet.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, none of the kids out there right now, their brains are fully developed.
That's true.
Oh goodness. But yeah, I hope this is the end of legacy media. I hope people start seeing the lies. I hope people start really gravitating towards, these independent journalists, like the people I mentioned, the Matt Taibbi's, the Glenn Greenwalds, the Tim Pools, the list goes on.
Mm-hmm.
I hope people just keep gravitating to them.
Yeah.
People have. Their numbers have skyrocketed. And they're writing articles that are informative, but they're now on different platforms that you have to go to, or maybe you have to subscribe to help them earn a living now.
Mm-hmm.
Man, anybody listening to this, go do it.
Yeah.
Find your news a different way.
That's how I find my news now. Now that you've been listening to them, I'm like, oh yeah, this is good.
Well, I talk to a lot of people from different sides of the political spectrum too, and it's amazing sometimes you'll get into a conversation and you feel like you're in like the Twilight Zone. I was talking to a coworker the other day, and he was talking about, he really thought that a lot of the riots going on throughout the country had something to do with white supremacists. And I was like, bro, there hasn't been a white supremacist that has burned down anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going all the way back to the 80s when you had lone white supremacists blowing up buildings in Oklahoma. I'm not talking about fools like that. White supremacy is terrible. It should be, as Trump has done 1 billion times.
38 times.
38 times a day. I love those video compilations. It should be denounced totally. But white supremacists aren't a thing in our country. I think there's like 3,000 members across the nation. And that was like in 2015 they did that study. I mean, maybe there are more. Maybe there are more people that are just overall racist and things like that. But like, that's not an issue, guys.
Right.
But we have hundreds of thousands of these other groups that are burning down our cities, that are killing people.
Yep.
And the news refuses to talk about that. And that's when it died for me. When we started calling these things peaceful protests, and when we started saying like, well, they have a good heart. They have a good agenda. I'm like, no, they don't.
That makes me...
they don't, because your heart and your agenda should be for your country.
Yeah.
And if you decide...
Or for people, for their livelihoods and their lives and their jobs.
Yeah.
You're destroying you're actually killing people and destroying their buildings, their livelihood.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't care about people. That's what you're doing. Whatever your cause is, it's not worth it.
Yeah. This is being a good venting session right now.
Oh, my goodness.
But go to independent journalists. Get out of the news. Get out of the news, the legacy news media. Find yourself a person with some integrity. That's another beautiful thing about independent journalism, is that they usually have some avenues where you can see them in long form.
Mhm.
So they're either being invited onto podcasts.
Mhm.
So you get to listen to like 3 hours of them.
Yeah.
Because then in a 3-hour podcast, you get to know who someone is.
Mhm.
You get to kind of see where they fall politically. Great. You get to kind of see where they fall socially. Great. You get to kind of see how they put their pulse on culture. All of these types of things you get to witness, and you get to really dig out during that long form conversation. That's a beautiful thing, because now you're entering into their journalism or their reporting with almost a connection to that person.
Yeah.
Like you feel like you kind of know them, and it just, there's something about that. It feels like a friend telling you the news.
Mhm.
It doesn't feel like some fake person on Fox News or CNN or MSNBC or any of these news outlets looking at a teleprompter,
Yeah.
pretending to look at you
Yeah.
and reading a script. It feels like someone off the cuff is reading you the news or telling you the news, or if you're reading it, you're what they sound like because you've watched, interviews with them, and now you can kind of digest the information in a different way.
Right.
So I think that's a major thing that I've gained this year that I hope more people gain. Yeah. What other things that I want to talk about tonight? That was a big one. I actually didn't plan on that one, but it was a big one right now that we just came up
We had
with.
a lot to vent about, so there we go.
That was good. Oh, that was just scratching the tip of the iceberg. My goodness, I could go for hours.
I know.
I could go for hours. But let's go back to what you were talking about before, though, with the time that you feel you would need to invest in news to really kind of know what's going on. I've struggled with this one because I, to a certain extent, agree with you, but and I agree with you because the news cycle has increased so drastically in the past couple of years. Like it's a every 14 minutes, it's a new news cycle.
It's not like back in the old days where you get the newspaper and
right. That was the news for the week.
Yeah.
These are the main
That's
events.
it. You have a full week to read this.
Right.
Till the next one comes.
Right now, stuff is changing, minute by minute, and it's really just the time it takes to write an article for new information to come out, new details to come out, new ideas to come out, and all that type of stuff. But I don't know if it's necessary still to be in it all the time.
So what is the least amount of time
I don't know
that you can take and still be informed?
I don't know.
Because I feel like there's no place to go. Okay, so this is my desire.
Yeah.
To go like once a week, get my information I need, be done. Maybe an hour.
Yeah.
Okay. Like Friday night or Saturday morning, you hear what happened. What do I need to know? What do I need to be aware of? So that maybe I can look more into that, but like a general thing. So first of all, I don't know if there is that. So 1 hour once a week as like a coverage of what happened that week. And then you have to choose what source.
Mm-hmm.
What source is going to give you credible information and summarize like the important things. Because everyone considers different things important.
Right.
Like some things I don't care to know. I don't need to know.
I think that's a major part of it. I think you really need to kind of outline what are the subjects, what are the topics, what are the I don't know. What news am I desiring right now to be more informed about?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if you choose like a specific path, that'll help you stay focused on something and can kind of narrow the results a little bit so that maybe there's not as many news articles about it from as many places and that kind of shrinks the sample size
But
down.
who is credible that I can read from? Because I feel like there's not very many.
There's not. But that's what I was talking about with knowing the people behind those news organizations. You really, CNN, Fox News, all of these different places, they're good enough that you could probably sift through and get general news. Could you get good news? And I don't mean positive. I just mean satisfactory, honest news. Maybe. It's hit and miss.
Right.
But there's places like Just the News that you can go.
What's that?
It's a website. It kind of curates all different news mediums and news medias and kind of puts it all in one place so that you can kind of certain. I don't go there too often because I listen to things more.
Yeah.
But it kind of brings all of the articles together, and I think it breaks it down by subject. So you can like look at a topic and then see like articles from different places.
Yeah.
So, that's an option.
Yeah.
That kind of brings everything into one place. And I think if you pick something and then just sort of skim over different news articles from different places, you'll get at least a decent understanding of that.
Right.
Good understanding? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It goes back to what I said before. I think you really need to know the person.
Yeah.
And if that person is able to provide more long form and in-depth conversation and talking about that subject, either on a podcast or YouTube videos or, just something along those lines where they dig into the information a little more. That's good. Also, I'm just thinking of this now. Sometimes it's really good to, depending on what the subject is, to go to professionals in that field and try to find their opinions on a subject. So like, let's say you're dealing with, try to pick a subject, something legal related. You're not really sure how the courts work. You're not really sure how law works and all that type of stuff. There are lawyers that have podcasts. There are lawyers that have shows. Try and find them. There's some really good shows out there where they'll break down in kind of simpleton, forms law. And they'll break down a case and say, okay, here's what's happening here. Here's why it's happening. And that might be a better way sometimes. You'll learn.
Right.
You get to be educated on law a little bit, but then you'll also get a much deeper understanding of what's going on with something.
That's
because
true.
Especially with like any type of political legal thing, all the politicians are telling you their side of a case.
You're not hearing the process and what's going on, why it's going on. Yeah.
I still don't really know anything that happened with, Russiagate, with the Ukraine thing, with, impeachment, like all the stuff that happened this year with Trump. I don't know anything about it unless I read a little bit of like the Mueller report. I read a little bit of some of the stuff, coming up with the impeachment. I've read a little bit, but I'm not reading 500 pages of legal documents.
Yes.
I don't know what it means. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
I don't care to be. But if there's a person that's pretty trustworthy that could kind of break down the key things in it, that could be helpful.
Right.
So that's another option. Find professionals in different fields. If you're like, oh man, the border issue really is something that bothers me, or I just don't know enough about, there's ICE agents that you could probably listen to, and they could really break down more than all of these political pundits who are like, no, we don't need walls, we don't need borders, we don't need all this type of stuff. We do. It's in every country, but once you listen to a professional in that field, and of course I picked like the most controversial one for that example. But if you listen to someone in that field, like I've done, I've listened to ICE agents who are talking about some of the issues, some of the lack of funding, especially during the Obama administration. A lot of issues arose over illegal immigration that kind of had to be resolved during Trump's presidency. I doubt Trump was like, I really want to build a wall. I really want to do this, but it's had to be addressed. And ICE agents were really able to explain this and say, if we were better funded, if we had better supplies, if we had better, technology, we could do our jobs without some of these walls and different things. It was good. It was very informative.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know. Trying to think of some other, but time, like how long you should do it and how often, and
because like
I don't know.
You listen to it, which I think is a really good idea, and like I would do that, but I find myself not, just simply because of like my day with the kids,
right?
Like they're constantly interrupting me, or screaming or playing over it, that I can't actually get anything out of it. Like maybe I could let it play and I might hear a couple of things, but I'm not going to actually get much out of it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to stop it every
if you could,
2 minutes.
I wouldn't want to read the news to our kids. I was going to say, like, I wonder if you could like read a news article with the kids and just try and talk about it and explain it.
I would love to be able to do that.
But the problem is the news sucks.
Yeah.
So much right now that.
And they would be asking me questions the whole time through.
Yeah.
They'd be like, well, who's that person?
Yeah. Why do these politicians sound like us? Why are they yelling at each other like that? Why are they saying mean things?
And then
shouldn't they be disciplined?
And Elijah would say, that's not kind of compassionate.
Yeah.
That's not kind of compassionate. He needs to be kind of compassionate.
That's his favorite word. That's his favorite phrase, to Addie. You're not being kind and compassionate to me. That's my favorite. You're not being kind and compassionate, Addie.
He started saying that when like I would read books or whatever it was. If someone wasn't being kind, then he goes off and he says, they're not being kind and compassionate. I'll be like, you're right, Elijah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so good.
But yeah, so I don't think that would work. Even like things that I think would be fun that I read to them, they don't.
Yeah,
sometimes they're not paying attention. So
I wouldn't.
And then I couldn't. Yeah, it wouldn't be appropriate.
No. And that's another thing. That's sad.
Yeah. Yep.
Our news is so violent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know of a better word than that. So volatile.
Yeah.
I guess. It's language and it's kind of scathing hate for the other side.
Yeah.
That's
actually a really good point though. I didn't think about that till now. So I wonder at what age do we just like start telling our kids all about the news and then explaining it to them so they can figure it out for themselves as they grow? Because I bring that up because what I'm teaching Brahm right now in homeschooling, they don't shy away from a lot of things in like the history part.
Yeah.
And like sometimes I'm reading it and I'm like, ooh, okay. Like, I guess that's okay to like tell him, but like,
it's real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how just some violent stuff that happened and you're just telling them, and then just sad things too, like tragic things that happened to people in the past because hard times were hard. And you're like telling them, yeah, that person's mom died.
Well, I mean,
because they got sick and just like a lot of people died on that ship over to the Americas. And like, just, it's stuff they do need to know. And they actually always take it fairly well. They're like, oh, that's okay. And sometimes they're sad.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just thought like,
I just think about,
they might be able to handle more than we think if we explain it to them.
On that ship. Like, think about the kids that were on the Mayflower when they were coming over here to
tough
America.
Kids.
Exactly. Some of them died.
Yeah.
Some of them died.
Saw their parents die.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that parents back then were saying, hey, this is going to be a hard journey.
Yeah.
Some of us might not make it.
Yep.
Some of us might get real sick.
Yep.
Some of us might not eat very well. We don't know.
Right.
We don't know. There's no end date for this journey.
Yep.
It's going to be hard when, Americans went west on the prairie. Those kids didn't have video games. They didn't have, phones to watch videos on. They just looked around at prairies.
They didn't have snacks every 3
snacks.
hours.
Yeah. Pa had to hunt if they wanted to eat. Yeah, I mean, I think, I love how safe our culture is now.
Mhm.
I love how safe my kids are now. There's stuff around that we have to make them aware of, and we do. So, we have to be gentle, I think, with the information that we're giving them and be kind and compassionate. But I don't know how much maybe I'm just so jaded by how divisive our political climate is right now that like that one I would much rather keep from them for a while. At least until I could teach them to be responsible, loving adults.
Yeah.
Not adults, I wouldn't wait that long, but until I could really teach them how people are supposed to be treated.
Yeah.
So that they could, like you said, when they do read a news article, can look at this and say, what is this? Why is this person being so terrible?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that's a huge thing for me, is just wanting them to be more culturally, socially, and personally aware.
Yeah.
Before we kind of let them dive into that space. Because so many of those people are so socially and culturally and personally unaware, ignorant, and it's a hard thing right now. But so we'll see. We'll see what happens in the days to come.
How many days to come? We don't know, but
who knows? Who knows? I know I was just telling you on the way here. I don't know which state it was, but they were like, yeah, we'll finish counting on November 12th. And I'm like,
that's next Wednesday.
I was like, that's a week from now. That's a week from now. What? Yeah, it's so crazy. It's so crazy. But going back to like the lockdowns, the same way that the lockdowns were carried out is very reflective of the way these elections were carried out. Some of the same states, and we're in one, the same way that Pennsylvania kind of sucked with the lockdowns and kind of sucked with sending old people back into nursing homes when they had COVID, and kind of sucked in a lot of other ways, are still sucking right now in their election.
Yeah.
The fact that like Florida was done, man, when the polls closed, they were done like within an hour.
Oh, wow.
I think they called that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure maybe it was a little longer. That was a long night, but they called Florida early. And
that's a big state too.
It's a very big state, but they were just and a heavily populated state too. But they were just so more prepared for this election.
Right.
Pennsylvania and many other states were just so ill prepared, and their process was just so weird.
Yeah, yeah.
I understand it's a weird time. I understand you really want to make people feel as comfortable as possible.
Right.
But goodness gracious.
Right. We
the fact
could have planned ahead a little better.
Yeah, the fact that we have 5 states, I think, right now. While we're recording this, I think 5 states are still in play. Like, it's 3 days.
Yeah. It's been
3
3
days now. And we still have 5 states in play in a national election? Like, what? Oh, yeah.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. Yeah. Well, that was good. I think that was a good conversation.
I think so.
I have some more that I want to talk about kind of along this stuff, but it's more cultural. It's more just stuff that I'm seeing right now that I really want to start talking about, start talking with my friends about. Just because one of the things I see right now is just and I think I've mentioned this before in the podcast, but just the lack of unity in our country. And we need Democrats and we need Republicans.
Yep.
We do. You know, we need a slower government because it takes a long time to make a choice about something, and that's good.
Yeah.
I am a huge fan of slow government.
Yeah.
And we've kind of given government a little too much power, in my opinion, and we've made it a little too quick so that many voices and many hands aren't able to get involved and really work stuff out. And that's on a government side. I think on a cultural side, we're so divided. And I want to talk about how we, you know, me personally and my friends can start working at breaking down those divides. You know, how do we bring this country together? I don't care, honestly, I don't care about who wins this election. You know, I voted for a certain person, but I want this election to be integrous.
Yeah.
You know, I care way more about the integrity of the election because I have kids. And I want them to have an integrous election when they get to vote.
Yep.
You know, I don't want them to live in a country where we wonder about our elections. I don't want that. And I want this country to be American.
Yeah.
You know, we had that. We had that. Even in the 90s when I was growing up, there was problems, there was division, there was stuff. But it was okay. Now you kind of get looked down on if you are too patriotic.
Yeah.
But this is the best country.
Yeah.
This is the most tolerant country.
We are so blessed.
This is the richest country. This country literally brings up the world. Like in terms of poverty, America has literally lifted the rest of the world out of poverty. No one talks about that.
Yeah.
We don't pat ourselves on the back and say, "Hey, we still have issues, but look what we've done."
Yeah.
And that's what
let's be more unified and do more.
Let's do more.
Yeah.
Let's do more. And
Instead
that's what
of,
I want to get to.
Yeah. Making more and more divisions out of things we disagree with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, let's wrap it up here. Thanks everybody for listening today. I hope this wasn't a little too heated for you. But came from the heart and that's where I come from on this podcast. So hope you're with us for the next podcast. We will see you later. All right. Bye.